The crystal chandelier above cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of the grand ballroom. But all I could hear was the sound of my world crashing down around me. 20 feet away, my husband Brandon stood with his back to me, a glass of expensive whiskey in his hand, surrounded by his lawyer friends like he was holding court. Honestly, guys, I doubt this joke of a marriage will survive another year. Brandon's voice carried across the room with that familiar, arrogant tone I'd grown to hate. She's nowhere near my level. I mean, look at her. Still trying to play in the big leagues when she barely graduated from a community college. The group erupted in laughter. These were men I'd smiled at, made small talk with, even invited to our home for dinner parties. Now they were laughing at me like I was some kind of entertainment. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped steel bands around my ribs and was slowly tightening them. The beautiful black dress I'd spent hours picking out suddenly felt like a costume, like I was playing dress up, in a world where I didn't belong. "Come on, Brandon," one of them said, still chuckling. "She's not that bad. At least she's pretty." "Pretty doesn't pay the bills," Brandon replied, taking another sip. "And it definitely doesn't make up for the embarrassment. Do you know she actually thinks her little marketing job is important? She calls herself a director, like she's running some Fortune 500 company, instead of handling social media for local restaurants." More laughter. Each sound felt like a slap across my face. I stood frozen behind a marble pillar, my champagne glass trembling in my hand. 3 years of marriage. And this is what he really thought of me. This is what he told his friends when I wasn't around. "So what are you going to do?" another voice asked. Brandon shrugged. "Wait it out, I guess. Maybe she'll finally realize she's out of her depth and leave on her own. Save me the trouble of divorce papers." You're too nice, man," someone else chimed in. "I would have cut her loose years ago." "Yes. Yeah, well, some of us have reputations to maintain," Brandon said, with a smirk I could hear in his voice. "Can't have people thinking I married beneath me, and then couldn't even make it work." The words hit me like physical blows. Married beneath him. Out of my depth. A joke. I thought about all the times I'd defended him to my sister Carmen when she said he was changing me. All the times I'd made excuses for his little comments about my background, my education, my career. I'd told myself he was just stressed from work, that he didn't mean it the way it sounded. But here he was, saying exactly what he meant, to the people whose opinions mattered most to him. My hands were shaking now, and not from the cold. Something hot and fierce was building in my chest, pushing out the hurt and replacing it with something much more dangerous. I set my champagne glass down on a nearby table and walked toward the group. My heels clicked against the marble with each step, but the sound was drowned out by their continued laughter. "The funniest part," Brandon was saying as I got closer, "is that she actually thinks she contributes something to our household, like her little paycheck. Makes any difference when I'm pulling in 6 figures." I stopped right behind him, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the expensive one I'd bought him for his birthday last month. "Brandon," I said quietly. He turned around, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise maybe, or fear, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Natalie," he said, his voice suddenly bright and fake. "There you are, sweetheart. We were just talking about the Peterson case." The lie came so easily to him, like he'd had practice. I looked around at the circle of men, these successful lawyers in their expensive suits, and smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that should have made them nervous. "Actually," I said, my voice calm and clear, "you were talking about what a joke our marriage is. About how I'm nowhere near your level." The silence that followed was deafening. Someone cleared their throat. Another person suddenly found their shoes very interesting. Brandon's face went pale, then red. "Natalie, you misunderstood." "Did I?" I interrupted, still smiling that dangerous smile, because it sounded pretty clear to me. "You doubt our marriage will survive another year, because I'm such an embarrassment to you. Oh, look, we can talk about this at home. Why wait a year?" I said, my voice getting stronger with each word. "Let's end it today." The words hung in the air, like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Brandon's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "You don't mean that," he said, but his voice cracked on the last word. I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered how I'd ever thought I loved this man. How I'd ever let him make me feel small. I've never meant anything more in my life, I said. Then I turned around and walked away. Not ran, walked, with my head high and my shoulders back, like the confident woman I used to be, before I let him convince me I was less than I was. Behind me, I heard someone whisper, "Holy shit." I didn't look back. The valet brought my car around, and I tipped him with a $20 bill, money from my little paycheck, that apparently didn't matter. My hands were steady now, as I drove through the city streets, but my phone kept buzzing with calls from Brandon. I didn't answer. By the time I pulled into Carmen's driveway, I had 17 missed calls and 12 text messages. I turned off my phone without reading them. My sister opened the door before I could knock, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. "What happened?" she asked. I opened my mouth to tell her, but no words came out. Instead, I started laughing. Not happy laughter, the kind of laughter that comes when something is so absurd, so unbelievable, that your brain doesn't know how else to process it. I left him. I finally managed to say between laughs that were starting to sound more like sobs, I actually left him. Carmen's eyes went wide. "What? Natalie, what are you talking about?" I sank onto her couch and told her everything. Every word, every laugh, every humiliating second of it. When I finished, Carmen was quiet for a long moment. "Good," she finally said. "Good? Good that you finally saw him for what he really is. Good that you walked away. Good that you didn't let him make you smaller than you are for one more second." I nodded. But inside, I felt hollow. 3 years of my life. 3 years of trying to be good enough for someone who never thought I was worth anything in the first place. My phone, which I'd turned back on, buzzed with a new message. I expected it to be Brandon again, but the name on the screen made my breath catch in my throat. Alex Rivera, Brandon's best friend. The message was short, but it changed everything. "Natalie, we need to talk. There are things about Brandon you don't know, things you deserve to know. Can you meet me tomorrow? Can you meet me tomorrow?" I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. What could Alex possibly want to tell me? And why now? After I'd just blown up my marriage, in front of half the legal community. Whatever it was, I had a feeling my night of revelations was far from over. 3 years ago, I never imagined I'd be the kind of woman who would walk out on her husband at a fancy party. Back then, I was different. Stronger, maybe. Or at least I thought I was. It was a charity gala for children's hospitals, and I was there representing my marketing firm. I'd just landed the biggest client of my career, a chain of upscale restaurants that wanted to completely rebrand. I felt unstoppable that night, wearing a red dress that made me feel like I could conquer the world. That's when I first saw Brandon Walsh. He was standing near the auction table, tall and confident in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. His dark hair was styled just right, and when he smiled, it was the kind of smile that made you forget your own name. He was bidding on a weekend getaway to Napa Valley, and every woman in the room was watching him. "Impressive," I said, when he won the auction for $3,000. He turned to me, and those green eyes focused on me like I was the only person in the room. "Not as impressive as what you just did up there." I'd given a speech earlier about the marketing campaign we'd created for the hospital. It had gone well, but I was surprised he'd been paying attention. "You were listening?" I asked. "Hard not to. You commanded that stage like you owned it." He extended his hand. "Brandon Walsh. And you're the woman who just made everyone in this room want to donate their life savings." I laughed, feeling a flutter in my stomach. "Natalie Chen. And I think you're giving me too much credit. I don't think I'm giving you enough." We talked for hours that night. He told me about his work at one of the city's most prestigious law firms, about his dreams of making partner before he turned 35. I told him about building my marketing career from nothing, about the satisfaction of helping small businesses grow. He seemed genuinely interested in everything I said. He asked smart questions about my work, laughed at my jokes, and made me feel like the most fascinating person he'd ever met. "You're not what I expected," he said, as the evening wound down. "What did you expect? Someone more?" Typical. Most women I meet at these things are either looking for a husband with money or trying to climb some social ladder. He paused, studying my face. You're here because you actually care about the cause. I should have paid more attention to that comment. The way he divided women into categories. The assumption that most of us were gold diggers or social climbers. But I was too caught up in the way he looked at me, like I was special. We started dating immediately. Brandon was charming, attentive, and generous. He sent flowers to my office, took me to expensive restaurants, and introduced me to a world I'd never experienced. Opera premieres, wine tastings, weekend trips to his family's cabin in the mountains. You're so different from anyone I've ever dated, he told me one evening as we walked along the waterfront. You're real, genuine. You don't care about all the superficial stuff. I fell hard and fast, maybe too fast. The first warning sign came when he met my family. Carmen was in nursing school then, working double shifts to pay for her education, while taking care of our elderly neighbor, who couldn't afford proper care. Our parents had died in a car accident when I was 22, and Carmen and I had learned to take care of each other. Your sister seems dedicated, Brandon said after dinner at Carmen's tiny apartment. She's amazing. She's going to be an incredible nurse. Of course. It's just, nursing is such a demanding job, for so little pay. Has she considered other options? I bristled. She loves helping people. Not everything is about money. No, of course not, he said quickly. I just meant she's clearly intelligent. She could probably do anything she wanted. It seemed like a compliment at the time, but looking back, I can see what he really meant. Carmen's choices weren't good enough for his standards. The second warning sign was his mother, Patricia Walsh. She was everything I wasn't. Old money, private schools, country club memberships, going back generations. The first time Brandon brought me to their family estate, she looked me up and down like I was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. So you work in marketing, she said, making it sound like I cleaned sewers for a living. I run my own firm, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. How entrepreneurial. The word dripped with condescension. Brandon didn't defend me. He just smiled and changed the subject. But the biggest warning sign was his friend Alex Rivera. They'd been best friends since law school, and Alex was always around. He was quieter than Brandon, more thoughtful, and he had this way of watching everything, with careful eyes. Be careful with him, Alex said to me one night, when Brandon was getting drinks at a bar. What do you mean? Brandon's used to getting what he wants, and when he gets bored. Alex shrugged. Just don't lose yourself trying to be what he wants you to be. I laughed it off. I'm not changing for anyone. But I was wrong. So very wrong. The changes started small. Brandon would make little comments about my clothes, my hair, the way I talked, always framed as helpful suggestions. You might want to tone down the enthusiasm when you talk about work, he said after a dinner party with his colleagues. It comes across as eager. Maybe try the salmon instead of the burger, he suggested at restaurants. It's more sophisticated. You don't need to mention your parents' accident, he said before meeting his friends. It makes people uncomfortable. Slowly, piece by piece, I started editing myself. I bought clothes he approved of, learned to speak more softly, stopped talking about the things that excited me. I told myself I was just adapting, growing, becoming more refined. I was really just disappearing. The proposal came 18 months after we met, at the same charity gala where we'd first talked. He got down on one knee in front of everyone, with a ring that cost more than I made in 6 months. Natalie Chen, he said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. You've made me want to be a better man. Will you marry me? Everyone was watching. Cameras were flashing. The crowd was holding its breath. I said yes, because how could I say anything else? But even as he slipped the ring onto my finger, even as everyone applauded, and champagne appeared, and people congratulated us, I caught Alex's eye across the room. He wasn't smiling. He was looking at me, like he was watching someone drown. The first year of marriage was like living in a beautiful prison, where the bars were made of silk and gold. Brandon had insisted we move into his penthouse apartment downtown, a gleaming space with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that cost more than most people's cars. "Your little place is charming," he'd said when we got engaged, "but it's not really suitable for a Walsh family member." I should have fought harder to keep my cozy apartment, with its mismatched furniture and plants on every windowsill. Instead, I let him pack up my life and move it into his sterile showcase, where everything had its place, and nothing felt like home. The criticism started almost immediately after the honeymoon. "Sweetheart, maybe you should consider updating your wardrobe," Brandon said one morning as I got ready for work. "Now that you're Mrs. Walsh, people will have certain expectations." I looked down at my favorite blazer, navy blue, perfectly professional and comfortable. "What's wrong with this?" "Nothing's wrong with it. It's just off the rack. Patricia mentioned a wonderful personal shopper who could help you develop a more sophisticated style." Patricia. His mother had opinions about everything I did, and Brandon always seemed to agree with her. I ended up spending a fortune on clothes I didn't like, in colors that washed me out, all because they had the right designer labels. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Work became my refuge, the one place where I still felt like myself. My marketing firm was thriving, and I'd just signed 2 major new clients. But even that success became a source of tension. "Do you really need to work such long hours?" Brandon asked one evening when I came home after a particularly productive day. "I make enough to support us both comfortably." I love my work," I said, settling onto the couch beside him. "Today we launched a campaign that's going to help a small family restaurant compete with the big chains. It's exactly the kind of project that made me want to start my own firm." Brandon's smile was patronizing. "That's sweet, honey. But maybe it's time to think about scaling back. Focus on being a wife. We should start thinking about children soon." Children. We talked about having kids someday, but I wasn't ready. I was only 26, and my business was just hitting its stride. But Brandon had already decided our timeline. "I'm not ready for children yet," I said, carefully. "Of course you are. You're a natural caretaker, and Patricia is so excited about grandchildren." Patricia again. It was always Patricia. The worst part was how he did it in front of other people. At dinner parties with his colleagues, he'd make little jokes about my cute little business or my ambitious phase. He'd pat my hand condescendingly when I tried to contribute to conversations about business or politics. "Natalie has such interesting ideas," he'd say with a smile that never reached his eyes. "She sees things from such a unique perspective." The other wives would give me sympathetic looks, but they never said anything. They'd learned to stay quiet too. Alex was the only one who seemed to notice what was happening. At Brandon's birthday party last year, he'd pulled me aside while Brandon was holding court with his law school friends. "You seem different," Alex said, his dark eyes serious. "Quieter." "I'm fine," I lied, smoothing down the expensive dress that felt like a costume. "Are you?" Because the Natalie I met 3 years ago would have called Brandon out for that comment about women not understanding contract law. He was right. The old me would have corrected Brandon immediately, would have cited the 3 contract law courses I'd taken in business school. Instead, I just smiled and changed the subject. "Marriage changes people," I said weakly. "Bite," I said weakly. "It shouldn't erase them." But Alex's concern only made things worse. Brandon noticed us talking and spent the rest of the evening making pointed comments about wives who got too friendly with their husbands' friends. The breaking point came 6 months ago, at Brandon's parents' anniversary party. I'd been working on a major presentation for weeks, and I was exhausted. When Patricia made another snide comment about my little hobby job, I finally snapped. "It's not a hobby," I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended. "I employ 12 people and generate over 2 million in revenue annually." And the room went silent. Patricia's face turned red, and Brandon's jaw tightened. "Natalie," he said quietly, "perhaps you should get some air. I'm fine right here." "No," he said, his voice harder now. "You're not." He took my arm and guided me out to the garden, his grip just tight enough to hurt. "What the hell was that?" he hissed once we were alone. "Your mother insulted my work." Again. My mother was making conversation. "You embarrassed her. You embarrassed me." I was defending myself. You were showing off. Acting like you're something you're not. His green eyes were cold now. Nothing like the warm gaze that had captivated me at that charity gala. You're a small-town girl who got lucky with a little marketing firm. Stop pretending you belong in the same league as my family. The words hit me, like a physical blow. I stared at him. This man I'd married. This man I'd thought loved me. And realized I was looking at a stranger. I want to go home, I whispered. Good. Maybe some time to think will help you remember your place. We drove home in silence, and I spent the night crying in the guest bathroom so he wouldn't hear me. That was the night I started to disappear completely. I stopped arguing, stopped defending myself, stopped being anything more than the quiet, decorative wife he wanted me to be. Carmen tried to talk to me about it when she visited last month. You're not yourself anymore, she said, watching me move around the kitchen like a ghost. You used to light up when you talked about work. Now you barely mention it. I'm just tired, I said. But we both knew it was more than that. He's killing who you are, Natalie. Piece by piece. I wanted to argue with her, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew she was right. I just didn't know how to find my way back to the woman I used to be. Until tonight, when I heard Brandon's true feelings about our marriage, spoken like a joke to his friends. Now I remembered exactly who I was, and I was done being anyone else. I woke up on Carmen's couch, with sunlight streaming through her living room windows, and the taste of regret, thick in my mouth. For a split second, I forgot where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The party, Brandon's words, the way I'd walked out in front of everyone. My phone was buzzing on the coffee table. 37 missed calls from Brandon, 15 text messages, and 3 voicemails. I didn't need to listen to them to know what they said. Apologies mixed with anger, promises mixed with threats. Carmen appeared in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee, still in her scrubs from her night shift at the hospital. How are you feeling? She asked, settling into the chair across from me. Like I just blew up my entire life, I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. Good. It needed blowing up. Before I could respond, my phone rang again. Brandon's name flashed on the screen, and this time I answered. Natalie! Thank God! His voice was strained, desperate. Where are you? I came home and you weren't here. Your clothes are gone from the closet. I'm exactly where I said I'd be. Away from you. Look, about last night, you misunderstood what you heard. I was just venting to the guys. You know how it is with work stress. The excuse was so pathetic, it almost made me laugh. Work stress made you call our marriage a joke. I didn't mean it like that. Come home, and we'll talk about this properly. There's nothing to talk about, Brandon. I heard exactly what you think of me. Natalie, please, don't throw away 3 years over a stupid comment. 3 years. As if the length of time somehow made his betrayal less painful. I'm not throwing anything away, I said. You already did that. I hung up and turned off my phone. Carmen was watching me with a mixture of pride and concern. What's your plan? I don't know yet. I need to think. But thinking was hard when my entire world had shifted overnight. I'd built my life around being Brandon's wife, and now I didn't know who I was supposed to be. Meanwhile, across town, Brandon was having his own crisis. He'd spent the night pacing around our empty penthouse, calling everyone he could think of who might know where I'd gone. When that failed, he'd started drinking, and by morning he was hungover and panicked. His first call was to his mother. She'll come back, Patricia said dismissively. She's just being dramatic. Women like her always are. What if she doesn't? What if she actually files for divorce? Then you'll be better off. I never understood what you saw in her anyway. But Brandon wasn't comforted by his mother's words. For the first time, he was facing the possibility that I might actually leave him, and it terrified him in a way he didn't understand. His second call was to Alex. She walked out, Brandon said without preamble when Alex answered. Right there, in front of everyone. She heard what I said about the marriage being a joke. By men, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Alex, are you there? I'm here, Alex said quietly. What do you want me to say, Brandon? I want you to help me figure out how to fix this. Maybe you should start by figuring out why you said it in the first place. Brandon's voice turned sharp. Don't lecture me. You're supposed to be my friend. I am your friend. That's why I'm telling you the truth. You've been treating Natalie like garbage for months. Maybe longer. That's not true. Isn't it? When's the last time you said something supportive about her work? When's the last time you defended her when your mother made one of her comments? When's the last time you treated her like an equal instead of an accessory? Brandon was quiet for a moment. She knew what she was getting into when she married me. Did she? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she married someone who pretended to respect her, and then spent 3 years trying to turn her into someone else. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The partners at the firm. My family's expectations. So you took it out on your wife. I never hurt her. You destroyed her confidence. You made her question her own worth. You turned the strongest woman I know into someone who apologizes for taking up space. Alex's voice was getting harder. If that's not hurting her, I don't know what is. Brandon felt something cold settle in his stomach. Since when do you care so much about my wife? Since I watched you systematically tear down someone, Alex stopped himself. Someone who deserves better. Someone you what, Alex? Nothing. Forget it. But Brandon wasn't going to forget it. A new suspicion was forming in his mind. Ugly and jealous. You have feelings for her. Brandon, that's what this is about. You want my wife. You're being ridiculous. Am I? You've been defending her for months. Always taking her side. Always making me feel like the bad guy. Maybe because you are the bad guy. The words hung between them like a slap. Brandon's face flushed red with anger. Stay away from her, Alex. I mean it. Or what? Or you'll find out what happens when you cross a Walsh. Alex laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Brandon hung up, his hands shaking with rage. First his wife had humiliated him in public, and now his best friend was betraying him too. But as he sat in his empty apartment, surrounded by the silence I'd left behind, Brandon began to realize that maybe, for the first time in his life, he was the one who was truly alone. And maybe, just maybe, he deserved to be. Back at Carmen's apartment, I was staring at my phone, which I'd turned back on, to find a new message waiting. It wasn't from Brandon. It was from Alex, and it was going to change everything. I stared at Alex's message for a full minute before my hands stopped shaking enough to open it. Natalie, I know this is complicated, but we need to talk. There are things about Brandon you don't know, things that will help you in the divorce. Can you meet me at Riverside Cafe at 2 p.m? Come alone. Carmen read the message over my shoulder. That's ominous. Should I go? Absolutely. If Alex has information that can help you, you need to hear it. I spent the morning trying to distract myself, but my mind kept racing. What could Alex possibly know that I didn't? We'd all been friends for 3 years. What secrets could Brandon have been keeping? At exactly 2 p.m, I walked into Riverside Cafe, a quiet place downtown, where Alex and I had met for coffee a few times. When Brandon was working late, Alex was already there, sitting in a corner booth, with his back to the wall. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down across from him. What's this about, Alex? He pulled out his phone and set it on the table between us. Before I show you this, I need you to know that I've been struggling with whether to tell you for months. I kept hoping Brandon would end it himself, or that you'd figure it out. My stomach dropped. End what? End. He's been having an affair, Natalie. For 6 months. The words hit me like ice water. I knew I should feel shocked, devastated, betrayed. Instead, I felt strangely numb. With who? His secretary, Vanessa. Vanessa, the 24-year-old blonde, who always seemed to work late when Brandon did, who answered his phone with a breathy voice, and called him Mr. Walsh, in a way that sounded more intimate than professional. How do you know? Alex's jaw tightened. I saw them together at a hotel bar 3 months ago. They didn't see me, but it was obvious what was happening. I confronted Brandon the next day. What did he say? That it didn't mean anything. That he was going through a rough patch with you and needed some excitement. He promised he'd end it. But he didn't. No. If anything, it got worse. Last week, I saw them coming out of his apartment building together. In the middle of the day, when you were at work. My apartment building. Our apartment building. He'd brought her to our home. Alex reached across the table and touched my hand gently. I'm so sorry, Natalie. I should have told you sooner. Why didn't you? Because I was a coward. Because I didn't want to be the one to destroy your marriage. Because... He paused, looking down at his hands. Because I was afraid of what it would mean for us. Us? Us. Alex looked up, and I saw something in his eyes that made my breath catch. I've been in love with you since the day Brandon introduced us. The confession hung in the air between us. I stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. Alex, I know it's wrong, and I know the timing is terrible, but I can't keep pretending anymore. Watching him treat you the way he has, watching you disappear piece by piece, it's been killing me. I thought about all the times Alex had been there, when Brandon wasn't. All the conversations where he'd actually listened to me, actually seemed interested in what I had to say. All the moments when I'd felt more understood by him than by my own husband. That's not all, Alex continued, pulling up something on his phone. There's more you need to know about Brandon's plans. He showed me a series of text messages between Brandon and someone named Richard Hoffman, Brandon's lawyer friend. The messages made my blood run cold. Planning to file for divorce anyway. Need to make sure I get everything. She contributed nothing to the marriage financially. Her business is worthless. Can we claim she was unfaithful? I read through message after message, each one more devastating than the last. Brandon had been planning to divorce me for months. He'd been building a case to take everything. Our joint savings, the investments, even trying to claim that my business had no value because it was just a hobby. He was going to destroy me, I whispered. He was going to try. But now you have evidence of his affair, and you know his strategy. You can protect yourself. I looked up at Alex, this man who'd been my husband's best friend, who'd just confessed to loving me, who'd risked everything to warn me about Brandon's betrayal. Why are you doing this? You're destroying your friendship with Brandon. That friendship was already over the moment I realized what kind of man he really is. Alex's voice was firm. And you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to fight back. Fight back. The words resonated through me like a bell. For 3 years, I'd been shrinking, apologizing, trying to make myself smaller, to fit into Brandon's world. But I wasn't small. I'd never been small. I was a woman who'd built a successful business from nothing, who'd survived losing her parents and helped raise her sister, who'd commanded that stage at the charity gala 3 years ago, like I owned the world. Brandon had made me forget who I was, but I was remembering now. What do I need to do? I asked. Alex smiled for the first time since I'd sat down. First, we get you the best divorce lawyer in the city, someone who specializes in cases like this. I can't afford the best lawyer in the city. You can't afford not to have the best lawyer in the city. And don't worry about the money. I'll help. Alex, I can't let you. Yes, you can. Let me help you, Natalie. Let me do this one thing right. I looked at this man who'd just turned his world upside down to protect me, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not love. Not yet. But gratitude. And maybe the beginning of hope. Okay, I said. Let's destroy him. Alex's smile turned sharp and dangerous. Now you're talking. As we left the cafe together, I felt like I was waking up from a 3-year nightmare. Brandon thought he could discard me like I was nothing. Take everything I'd worked for, and walk away clean. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. The war was about to begin, and this time, I was going to win. The law office of Catherine Morrison was nothing like the stuffy, intimidating places I'd imagined. Located on the 40th floor of a gleaming downtown tower, it had floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the entire city. Catherine herself was a woman in her 50s, with silver hair pulled back, in a perfect bun, and eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Walsh, she said, gesturing for me to sit across from her massive desk. Alex has filled me in on the basics of your situation. I have to say, your husband picked the wrong woman to underestimate. Alex had insisted on coming with me, and he sat beside me as Catherine spread out the evidence he'd provided. The photos of Brandon and Vanessa, the text messages about his divorce plans, financial records that Alex had somehow obtained. "How did you get all this?" I asked Alex quietly. "Brandon's not as careful as he thinks he is. He left his laptop open at my place last month. And I saw the messages with his lawyer. The photos. Let's just say I've been paying attention." Catherine looked up from the documents. "This is excellent evidence, but we need to move quickly. If your husband realizes what we know, he'll try to hide assets or destroy evidence. What's our first step? We freeze everything. Joint accounts, investments, anything he might try to move. Then we file for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct." Catherine's smile was sharp. "Your husband thought he was playing chess, Mrs. Walsh. He was actually playing checkers." The next few days were a whirlwind of legal documents and strategic planning. Catherine's team worked around the clock to build our case, while I tried to keep my business running and avoid Brandon's increasingly desperate attempts to contact me. He'd escalated from phone calls to showing up at my office. "Natalie, please," he said, cornering me in the parking garage after work. "We need to talk about this like adults. Adults don't cheat on their spouses and then plan to steal everything in a divorce," I replied, not stopping as I walked toward my car. "I don't know what lies Alex has been filling your head with." "Lies?" I turned to face him, and he actually took a step back at the look in my eyes. "Are you saying you haven't been sleeping with Vanessa for 6 months? Oh." His face went pale. "How did you... Are you saying you weren't planning to divorce me and claim I contributed nothing to our marriage?" "Natalie, let me explain. Are you saying you didn't bring your mistress to our apartment?" Brandon's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. Finally, he found his voice. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. And now everyone else is going to think it too." I got in my car and drove away, leaving him standing alone in the parking garage. That night, Catherine called with news that made my heart race. "We've discovered something interesting about your husband's finances," she said. "He's been hiding money in offshore accounts. Quite a lot of money, actually." How much?" "Nearly $500,000. Money that should have been declared as marital assets." I sat down hard on Carmen's couch. "He's been stealing from our marriage." Essentially, yes. This changes everything, Natalie. We're not just talking about adultery anymore. We're talking about financial fraud." The next morning, Brandon's world started falling apart. Catherine had filed our divorce papers at 9 a.m. sharp, along with a motion to freeze all marital assets and a formal complaint about the hidden accounts. By 10 a.m., Brandon's bank accounts were locked. By 11 a.m., the senior partners at his law firm had received copies of the evidence of his affair and financial misconduct. My phone rang at noon. It was Brandon, and he was screaming, "You vindictive witch. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've protected myself from a lying, cheating thief," I said calmly. "The partners want to see me this afternoon. They're talking about suspension pending investigation. You're destroying my career. You destroyed your career the moment you decided to commit fraud and adultery. This is Alex's doing, isn't it? He's been poisoning you against me because he wants you for himself. Alex didn't make you cheat. Alex didn't make you hide money. Alex didn't make you plan to steal everything from me in a divorce. You did all of that yourself. I'll fight this. I'll drag you through court for years. I'll make sure you don't get a penny. Good luck with that. Hard to fight from jail." "Jail? Financial fraud is a felony, Brandon. Catherine thinks the district attorney might be very interested in your offshore accounts." The line went quiet for a long moment. "Natalie." Brandon's voice was different now. Smaller. "Please, we can work this out. I'll give you whatever you want." I want a divorce. I want half of everything, including the money you hid. And I want you to stay away from me." What about Alex? Are you with him now?" I looked across Carmen's living room, where Alex was sitting at the kitchen table, helping Carmen with her nursing school applications. He'd been there every day since this started, not pushing for anything romantic, just supporting me through the hardest time of my life. "That's none of your business anymore," I said. "Natalie, please." I hung up. That afternoon, Brandon was suspended from his law firm, pending a full investigation. The story spread through the legal community like wildfire. The golden boy lawyer who'd been caught cheating and hiding money from his wife. Patricia Walsh called me that evening, her voice dripping with venom. "You little gold digger," she hissed. "You planned this whole thing, didn't you? Married my son for his money, and then destroyed him when you got bored." "Your son destroyed himself," I replied. "I just refused to go down with him. We'll see about that. The Walsh family has resources you can't imagine. So do I. And, unlike your son, I'm not afraid to use them." I hung up on her too. As I sat in Carmen's living room that night, surrounded by legal documents and evidence of my husband's betrayal, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. I felt powerful. Brandon had tried to make me small, tried to convince me I was nothing without him. But he was wrong. I was everything without him. And I was just getting started. 6 months later, I stood in my new office, on the 22nd floor of the Meridian building, looking out at the city that had once seemed so intimidating. The morning sun cast long shadows across my desk, where contracts for 3 major new clients waited for my signature. My marketing firm had not only survived the divorce, it had thrived. The final divorce decree had been signed 2 weeks ago. Brandon had fought until the very end, but Catherine Morrison was as ruthless as she was brilliant. When the dust settled, I walked away with half of everything, including the money he'd hidden offshore. More importantly, I'd kept my business and my dignity. Brandon hadn't been so lucky. The investigation into his financial misconduct had led to criminal charges. He'd plea bargained down to probation and community service, but his legal career was over. The state bar had revoked his license, and no firm in the city would touch him. Last I heard, he was working at his uncle's insurance company, in another state, a far cry from the prestigious partnership he'd once dreamed of. Patricia Walsh had tried to make good on her threats, hiring private investigators to dig up dirt on me, and spreading rumors about my business practices. But the legal community had rallied around me instead. Turns out, nobody likes a man who cheats on his wife and hides money, especially when that man had spent years acting superior to everyone around him. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. "Lunch today? I have news." I smiled, typing back. "Can't wait to hear it." Carmen had graduated nursing school with honors and landed her dream job in pediatric oncology. She'd also started dating a wonderful doctor named Miguel, who treated her like the amazing woman she was. Watching her happiness reminded me daily of what a healthy relationship looked like. A knock on my office door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in." Alex walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the smile that had become my favorite sight in the world. "Thought you might need caffeine before the Henderson meeting," he said, setting a cup on my desk. "You're a lifesaver." Alex had left his old law firm 3 months ago to start his own practice, specializing in family law and helping people like me who'd been taken advantage of by powerful spouses. His first case had been representing a woman whose husband had tried to claim she was mentally incompetent to avoid paying alimony. Alex had destroyed him in court. "Any word from the Peterson Group?" he asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "They want to sign 3-year contract, full marketing overhaul for all their restaurant chains." I couldn't keep the excitement out of my voice. "It's the biggest deal I've ever landed." "That's incredible, Natalie. You've built something amazing here." I looked around my office, at the awards on the wall, the photos of successful campaigns, the team of talented people I'd hired, who believed in the work we were doing. This was mine. I'd built it with my own hands, my own vision, my own determination. "We've built something amazing," I corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you." Alex and I had been taking things slowly. After everything with Brandon, I'd needed time to rediscover who I was outside of marriage, outside of someone else's expectations. Alex had been patient, supportive, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. But lately, I'd been ready for more. "Alex," I said, my heart suddenly racing. "There's something I want to tell you." Before I could continue, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Miss Chen? There's a call for you on line 1. Says it's urgent." I frowned, picking up the phone. "Natalie Chen, Natalie." The voice was broken, desperate. It's Brandon. I almost hung up immediately, but something in his tone stopped me. What do you want, Brandon? I need help. I'm in trouble, and I don't have anyone else to call. That's not my problem anymore. Please, just 5 minutes. I know I don't deserve it, but please. Alex was watching me with concern, and I put the call on speaker so he could hear. You have 2 minutes, I said. I lost everything. My job, my reputation. My family won't even talk to me. I'm living in a studio apartment and working for minimum wage. I can't even afford a decent lawyer for the appeals process. You made your choices, Brandon. I know I did this to myself. But I need you to know. I'm sorry. For everything. For the way I treated you. For making you feel small. For cheating. For trying to steal from you. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. The apology I'd waited 3 years to hear. But now, sitting in my successful business, surrounded by people who respected me, with a man who loved me, for exactly who I was, Brandon's words felt hollow. Thank you for saying that, I said quietly. But it doesn't change anything. I know. I wanted you to know that you were right to leave. You were right about everything. I looked at Alex, who nodded encouragingly. Brandon, I said, I hope you find a way to rebuild your life. I hope you learn to be a better person. But that journey doesn't include me. I understand. Goodbye, Natalie. Goodbye, Brandon. I hung up and sat back in my chair, surprised to find that I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sadness. Just peace. How do you feel? Alex asked, gently. Free, I said, and meant it completely. Alex stood up and walked around my desk, pulling me into his arms. I love you, Natalie Chen. Not the woman you were trying to be for him, but the woman you've always been. The woman who commands stages and builds empires and refuses to be made small by anyone. I looked up at him, this man who'd seen me at my lowest point, and helped me find my way back to myself. I love you too, I said, as Alex kissed me in my office, overlooking the city I'd conquered. I thought about the woman who'd walked out of that charity gala 6 months ago. She'd been broken, diminished, convinced she was nothing without her husband's approval. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who knew her own worth, someone who would never again let anyone make her feel less than she was. I was Natalie Chen. I was successful, powerful, and completely, utterly free. And this was just the beginning.